If you would, please. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I wanted to make this morning's Black History Month conversation about something positive. So much of Black history is about repression and abuse and the horrible injustices inflicted upon African Americans by white people, mostly, which I think these conversations are very important to share and learn about. And I don't want to diminish that fact at all in my presentation of some positive energy. That being said, I felt highlighting some of the great accomplishments of a few of the Black history's incredible innovators would not just be appropriate, but uplifting as well. So without any more preamble, I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to be talking about four Black history's inventors that you may never have heard of, but probably should have. But first, I'd like to share a couple of famous quotes because I love quotes, and I think that they are very intelligent and they say a lot. And if anybody knows who actually said these things, please, you're welcome to throw it up in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, so my first gentleman is Lewis Howard Latimer, and I'm just going to go ahead and read what's on the screen. So, Lewis Latimer was born in Chelsea, Massachusetts on September 4th, 1848. His parents, Rebecca Latimer and George Latimer, escaped from slavery in Virginia and fled to Massachusetts on October 4th, 1842. The day they arrived in Boston, Lewis's father was recognized by a colleague of his former slave owner and was arrested a few days later. His father's trial received great notoriety, was represented by Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, and was eventually able to purchase his freedom and live with his family in Chelsea, Massachusetts. Latimer's first patent was an improvement in the water closets for railroad cars. And this might seem like not such a big thing, but believe me, when you're trying to go to the bathroom on a train, this is a major accomplishment. And he also won a patent in 1874. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell employed Latimer, who was then a draftsman at Bell's patent law firm, to draft the necessary drawings required to receive a patent for Bell's telephone. So he was right alongside with Alexander Graham Bell with the invention of the telephone. He received a patent on September 13th, 1881 for the electric lamp, an improved design for producing light using electricity, and another on January 17th, 1882 for the process of manufacturing carbons, an improved method of production of carbon filaments for light bulbs, which was one of the major stumbling blocks when trying to produce a light bulb that would last more than just a few minutes or a few hours. He was personally invited to work with Thomas Edison in 1884. He also developed the forerunner of the air conditioner, and we can all thank him for that. And I wish he was around for us when our air conditioner goes down. But his apparatus for cooling and disinfecting was patented on January 12th, 1886. And in 94, Latimer pursued a patent on a safety elevator, which prevented riders from falling out into the shaft, which, again, pretty important. Some of the other things he accomplished in his lifetime are quite numerous. If you can imagine, a young Black man growing up, getting an education, dealing with life and racism. On top of all that, he was a veteran, served in the United States Navy aboard the Massasoit from the age of 15 to about 17 or 18. He wrote books on electric lighting. He wrote poetry. He became a patent consultant to multiple law firms. He taught English and drafting courses to immigrants in New York City. He was a founding member of the Unitarian Church in Flushing, New York. He played violin and flute on top of everything else, and he was fluent in German and French, um, gathering information and responsible for translating technical data into those two languages. So not many of us can say we can speak three languages on top of everything else we've learned in our lives. Our next inventor, nurse, scientist, is Bessie Blount Griffin. This woman's life achievements is nothing less than stunning. Bessie Blount, also known as Bessie Griffin, was a writer, nurse, physical therapist, inventor, and forensic scientist. She was born in Hickory, Virginia on November 24th, 1914. In the sixth grade, she had to discontinue her elementary education, although she would later learn her GED after her family moved to New Jersey. She studied nursing at the Community Kennedy Memorial Hospital in Newark, developing a passion in the field of physical therapy, a profession not even formalized or established until shortly after her birth. While attending Diggs Chapel Elementary School, Blount's teachers would reprimand her for writing with her left hand by rapping her knuckles with a stout stick. Blount took this to her advantage and taught herself not just to be ambidextrous, but to write with a pencil in her mouth and with her feet, which will come into play in her future. She attended Community Kennedy Memorial Hospital's nurses program, earned her nursing degree, and continued her education at Panzer College of Physical Education and Hygiene in East Orange, where she became a physical therapist. After World War II, many soldiers returned as amputees after being wounded in combat. As a part of Blount's physical therapy exercises, she taught veterans who had lost the ability to use their hands new ways to perform everyday tasks by substituting the use of their hands with the use of their teeth and their feet. And as a nurse and physical therapist, she also cared for and worked closely with Theodore Edison, who was the son of the famed inventor Thomas Alva Edison. While working at the Bronx Hospital in New York, Blount invented an electric self-feeding apparatus for amputees. A part of the device was patented in 1948. She also devised a neck frame for injured and ill patients that holds a bowl or a cup close to their face as a portable receptacle support. And in April 51, she was granted a US patent on that device. And she also invented the emesis basin, and better known as the kidney dish, which we are all very familiar with, I'm sure. But that's not all that she did. In her second career, in 1969, she embarked on a second career pursuing forensic science research. During her previous patient therapy, while demonstrating ambidextrous functions or writing with teeth or feet, she saw a correlation between physical health and writing characteristics, and this discovery inspired her to publish a technical paper on medical graphology. And after the publication of the paper, Blount's career in forensics quickly grew. By the late 1960s, she was assisting police departments in Norfolk, Virginia, Vineland, New Jersey, later joined the Portsmouth, Virginia Police Department as chief examiner. In 1977, England's Scotland Yard Forensic Science Laboratory invited Blount to join them for advanced studies in graphology. She was the first Black woman to train with Scotland Yard. On returning to the United States, she started a consulting business using her forensic experience to examine and authenticate documents and slave papers from pre-Civil War. She operated that business until the age of 83. Her verification of authenticity was also used on Native American treaties with the United States. And the next gentleman, Garrett Augustus Morgan, another inventor, a hero, as you'll see, and an activist, excuse me. Morgan was born in 1877 in Claysville, Bourbon, Kentucky, an almost exclusively African-American community outside Paris, Kentucky. His father was Sidney Morgan, a son and freed slave of Confederate General John H. Morgan of Morgan's Raiders. His mother, also a freed slave, was Elizabeth Reed, daughter of Reverend Garrett Reed. She was part Native American. Morgan only received a sixth grade education at Branch Elementary School in Claysville, then moved in search of work at the age of 14 to Cincinnati, Ohio. In 1895, his first invention was a belt fastener and the zigzag attachment for sewing machines. In 1913, he incorporated hair care products into his growing list of patents and launched the G.A. Morgan Hair Refining Company. In 1914, he received a patent for his smoke hood design, a precursor to the gas mask, the year he launched the National Safety Device Company in 1916. In 1916, Morgan and others rescued workers trapped by a fire in a water intake tunnel 50 feet below Lake Erie using his smoke hood invention. The modern-day traffic light was invented in 1922. It had two lights, red for stop and green for go. Well, he didn't think that that was enough because 2 years later in 1922, after witnessing a terrible traffic accident, he filed and received a patent for the traffic control device, which had a third yellow warning light. One of his last inventions was a self-extinguishing cigarette, which used a small plastic pellet filled with water placed just before the filter. Apparently never took off, I guess. And conscious of his heritage, he helped start the Cleveland Association of Colored Men in 1908. And my last gentleman, Oscar Michaud. He was a homesteader, a novelist, and a filmmaker, very early in filmmaking history. He was born on a farm in Metropolis, Illinois on January 2nd, 1884. He was the fifth child born to Calvin S. and Belle Michaud, who had a total of 13 children. His father was born a slave in Kentucky, and because of his surname, his father's family appears to have been enslaved by French-descended settlers. Michaud moved to Gregory County, South Dakota, where he bought land and worked as a homesteader. His neighbors on the frontier were predominantly blue-collar whites. This experience inspired his first novels and films. Michaud's years as a homesteader allowed him to learn more about human relations between whites and blacks. He created the Lincoln Motion Picture Company, the first movie company owned and controlled by black filmmakers. Michaud is regarded as the first major African-American feature filmmaker, prominent producer of race films, and has been described as the most successful African-American filmmaker of the first half of the 20th century. His first novel, The Conquest, was adapted to film and retitled The Homesteader. This film, which met with critical and commercial success, was released in 1919. His second silent film, Within Our Gates, was produced in 1920. Considered his response to the film The Birth of a Nation, which was called the most reprehensible racist film in Hollywood history. Michaud said that he created as a response to the widespread social instability following World War I. He would go on to write, direct, and produce more than 44 films. He sought to create films that would counter white portrayals of African Americans, which tended to emphasize inferior stereotypes. He created complex characters of different classes, and his films questioned the value system of both African American and white communities, as well as caused problems with the press and state censors. His films were used to oppose and discuss the racial injustice that African Americans received. Topics such as lynching, job discrimination, rape, mob violence, and economic exploitation were depicted in his films. And these films also reflect his ideologies and autobiographical experiences. And those are the four people that I've highlighted today. I have one short video to show you about Oscar, which explains in a little bit more detail about what he did and his influence on filmmaking in the early 1900s. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Good, okay.
Can't hear.
Chris, we can't hear.
We can't hear it.
Okay,
Share the sound.
when you share the screen, you should see a button that says share sound as well. So stop sharing. It's easier.
Sorry, guys. Should I
That's
stop
okay.
sharing and start it over again?
Yeah, stop sharing.
Okay.
And then when you click on share,
Yeah,
you should see a button like
Got
a checkbox. Yep,
thank you.
no problem.
Long before Spike Lee, John Singleton, and Julie Dash broke barriers for black cinema, Oscar Micheaux became the first major black filmmaker to produce and direct his own films. Ever the entrepreneur, Oscar Micheaux left home at 16, became a train porter, and then a homesteader. Supporting a farm was anything but easy. Micheaux turned to writing as a new source of income. And in 1917, Micheaux would publish a book that altered his future forever. It was called The Homesteader, and he adapted it into a silent movie, which he produced independently. The Homesteader began Micheaux's career as the first major independent producer-director of black films. His work critiqued the racist stereotypes of black people typically depicted in Hollywood films.
You are seeing a whole range of black characters on the screen, assertive, articulate, often sophisticated, strong characters who are trying to do something for themselves and the community.
His fifth film, Within Our Gates, directly rebutted the blatant racism of D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, a 3-hour-long piece of Jim Crow-era propaganda.
Within Our Gates responds directly to Birth of a Nation. The negative, stereotypical portraits of black people that were shown there were not how black people really were. And then showing that white supremacy was really the main problem in the South.
Other films, like The Symbol of the Unconquered and Body and Soul, sought to entertain while also delivering social commentary.
He covered issues that were not being covered in film, generally speaking. Lynching, discrimination, struggles around employment, class differences amongst African Americans.
Censor boards often edited Micheaux's movies or rejected them outright. He used these attempts to censor his work to his advantage, marketing uncensored versions to curious and daring audiences. Forced to fund his own work, Micheaux's success was self-made. Over a career spanning more than 3 decades, Micheaux created more than 35 films and is considered the most influential African-American filmmaker of his time.
Excellent, Chris.
Right.
Excellent.
Outstanding. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your introduction, because I think when you talked about showing something that was more uplifting, but you also balanced it with the fact that the narrative is part of our history and it is painful.
Mhm.
But I think to be able to show some of the contributions that are too numerous to name was very positive. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I'll tell you, just researching this project, I had an awful lot of things to edit it down. There was just so many people that have done so many things in Black history and their innovations and inventions. They're just too many to list. It's really eye-opening for me.
I want to thank you, Chris. As you were talking, I was thinking you're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, very true.
Yes,
I really want to thank you. We do have a book. I think the title is Black Inventors.
Mhm.
And there is either a paper or a book on what would the world be without Black people because of the inventions and everything. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And this is
Right.
good news because Addie said that she was planning on doing something on Black inventors. So we have a lot more.
Mhm.
Yep. Well, thank
And
you all
it's
for
good to
joining me
bring
this
it to
morning.
light. Yeah, it's good to bring it to light because a lot of people don't realize how,
Right.
like as Josephine said, how much Black people contributed to the building of this country.
Yeah, and the work that's being done now in medicine and sciences and physics, it's not surprising. It's just it'd be nice if we heard more about it.
Right.
And Amy pointed out there's a lot of, there's several books on Black inventors in the Youth Services collection.
So anybody know who those quotes were from? Oh, Addie, you're muted.
Oh, I think she must be talking to somebody.
Oh, okay. Anybody know who those quotes are from at the beginning?
No, I don't.
The first 5 were all Albert Einstein, and the last one was Thomas Edison.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chris.
I was
You're
gonna
welcome.
guess Einstein, but I didn't know for which one.
I was thinking of an African-American person. I never would have guessed.
Right. I wouldn't have either. So, you know,
Josephine.
Lewis Latimer was also very instrumental, as you could, which you discussed, with General Electric because of his whole thing with Thomas Edison, which, as we know, was a major, major accomplishment.
Mhm. Yep.
And it's nice to hear people besides, you know, the ones that we always hear about, like, what do we hear about? You know, George Washington Carver. And who are some of the other ones? Where's Miss Josephine? She knows,
Harry,
you know, the ones that you normally hear about.
If you
Yeah,
don't,
it's, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, it's nice to hear
Mhm.
about other people as well. Mhm.
I think too, Amy was just saying that there's a collection of a lot of information in youth services with, you know, the recognition of Black History Month. As I said the other day, I was there, very impressive. So I would encourage people to go in and see some of the wonderful books that they have there.
Melanie, who's presenting tomorrow?
I don't have anybody, so if anybody wants to do it, it's at 10:30 tomorrow too.
10:30?
You don't have anybody for tomorrow?
No.
I've been doing some research, so if nobody volunteers, I'll step in.
Okay, well, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Chris.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you,
rest of your day.
Chris.
You're welcome.
Great job.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.